Bienvenidos and welcome to Puentes, the podcast dedicated to exploring the diverse and dynamic world of primary healthcare in the land of enchantment. I'm Mario Losal. On today's episode, we're honored to introduce a remarkable individual in the field of family medicine, Dr. Ashten Duncan. Dr. Duncan currently shines as the co-lead resident at the University of New Mexico Santa Fe Family Medicine Residency Program, where his dedication to the practice of family medicine has made a significant impact. Recently, Dr. Duncan's outstanding contributions to the field were recognized with the prestigious AAFP Award for Excellence in Graduate Medical Education, a testament to his commitment to advancing medical education and patient care. But the journey doesn't end here for Dr. Duncan. After graduation, he's poised to take on a new and exciting role as a core faculty member at the Medicos del Centro Family Medicine Residency Program in Española, New Mexico. Today's interview is hosted by Dr. Mac Bowen, the program director of the UNM Santa Fe Family Medicine Residency Program. With his profound experience and knowledge, Dr. Bowen is the perfect person to delve into Dr. Duncan's journey, accomplishments, and future endeavors in family medicine. So let's join Dr. Bowen and Dr. Duncan for what promises to be an enlightening and engaging conversation. This is Puentes.
Thank you so much, Mario, and welcome Dr. Duncan to Puentes. Absolutely a pleasure to have you featured. You've been an incredible force within our residency program, and it's so excited that you are going to continue your work in northern New Mexico. We're so lucky to have you. For those of you who don't know, do you want to add to a little bit about your background and a little bit about your journey to New Mexico?
For sure. Well, again, hello, everyone. I'm Ashten Duncan, one of the third-year residents within our program. And just a beautiful introduction, too, for Mario on that. Just to add a little bit of information. So I am originally from Oklahoma, grew up there for most of my life, did spend several years traveling across the world with my father in the Air Force. But Oklahoma really was where I got started on a lot of this work very early on. Went to college there, did my public health training, medical school, all of that. I think, really growing up in Oklahoma was a really important part of informing the kind of work I do today, because there are a lot of parallels between the issues in Oklahoma and the issues that we face here in New Mexico. What really brought us out, though, I was looking for a place to set up shop where my wife and I could both thrive. She's an artist. I wanted to really nurture her career as much as I wanted to nurture my own. And in the process for me, it's been amazing. And so I'm really excited to talk more about this and some of the plans I have for the future.
That's great. Can you speak a little bit more about what attracted you to training in northern New Mexico, in terms of some of those specifics that hit the boxes for both you and your wife?
Right. So I mentioned for my wife, it was kind of just like a glove that fit extremely well for her. It was like getting into the Santa Fe arts community was a huge step for her, especially coming from a place like Tulsa, Oklahoma, where, the arts community is, it's bustling, but it's not anything like Santa Fe. And, it was the unique opportunity for her specifically to work in a place that wasn't overly large too, like looking at Los Angeles, looking at New York. I mean, amazing places for art as well, but also just places that are a little challenging to live in and very different from where we came from. Now, for me, I went to the OUTU School of Community Medicine, and kind of right out of the gate, a lot of what we really focused on when I was a student was about using community resources, being in tune with the community to really address health issues. Now, if we look at what we do up here, the Santa Fe program, and thinking about our work in northern New Mexico, so much of that going on that just the huge issues around access and the fact that there were plenty of patients I would see for the first time that would tell me, like, I haven't been seen in 3, 4, 5, 10 years. Like it was, it was really striking right out of the gate. But it also really made me very comfortable in the sense of that wait, this is reminding me of what it was like to be a student and to use those skills I had already been developing during my time in Tulsa. So for me, northern New Mexico really became a really great opportunity to practice those skills, expand them. And I mean, I have zero regrets because it has been amazing in terms of being able to grow in this area and learn so much about the people around here and the impact that healthcare professionals can make in this part of the state.
Yeah, that really resonates with me and my experience of getting more invested in the community here. We really have this, on one hand, also underserved in the healthcare sector, and however, layered on that is this large philanthropy and a lot of organizations active in the sphere, and a lot of to stay here and to practice here. So when you consider, you had the ability to seek employment really in a lot of different areas. What was it about the Medicos del Centro program in Española that really piqued your interest and attracted you to sign on there?
It's so funny too, because I think back through this journey to this point I'm at right now with the program, and I remembered hearing about the El Centro program way back. I think it was actually during I think it was the AAFP summer conference that I first heard about it, and it was actually through the consortium that they were starting to talk about this emerging project there. And for me, 4-year requirement through the National Health Service Corps. So that was always kind of my mind. I look out for opportunities that would qualify. The HPSA score that they're requiring is 19 for scholars. So we're talking like 19 out of depending on your category, about 25 or 26. So we're talking about areas of huge need. Yeah.
Now, for those of you who don't know that maybe listening, the HPSA score is just how we assess. I know how in need of physicians a community is. So El Centro has a very high score relatively to the ultimate mark.
Exactly, and I appreciate that, Dr. Bowen, because that's exactly right. So that was the one major piece of it guiding all of that. Now in New Mexico, just for everyone listening, there's kind of this bittersweet part of it with the National Health Service Corps. There are a lot of places to work at in New Mexico. And in fact, you could almost throw a stone and find a place that you could work at truly. And that is good for you in terms of choice going into your service payback period. But you also have to contextualize that based on what Dr. Bowen just said, that means that there's that much need that we really need around. And I remember I met Dr. Lamartine over at our at the Christus St. Vincent Family Medicine Center. And it was just kind of very casual introduction. Hey, I'm really interested in what you all are doing up there. Rotation was set up, and then within the course of that rotation, we're talking about actually turning this into a job. And I was just really amazed about this opportunity because, like I said, the number of things that had fall into place to make this happen, the right combination of opportunities for me to practice medicine later on, this opportunity to work for a brand new residency program, that is I don't know, not many people could say I was there for the founding of this. I may not have been
so cool.
Yeah, it's so awesome. So for all those reasons, I mean that's what really drew me in and what is making me so excited about this opportunity to work as core faculty with them.
Yeah, you and I have talked about the multiplier and just kind of how patient is fitting perfectly in my mission of just touching as many lives as possible. And I think your ability to imprint and provide a new residency is going to just afford you a wealth of opportunities to impact that. So we're super excited to keep you in academia, to keep you inspiring and teaching because you have many gifts along that. So can you talk about a few areas that you're really interested in impacting the education of residents? What are some of your areas, your passion areas within family medicine?
Right. So definitely this conversation has already started with both Dr. Lamartine and Dr. Reyes, who's the program director and associate program director, respectively. So, a lot of things that I really want to focus on with faculty. The one is kind of the bread and butter of kind of where I start. I really want to be a really strong mentor for the residents we'll have. And now, in terms of some of the other things that I'm hoping to do within the program educationally, I really do want to focus a lot of what I've learned from my public health training, and in terms of really helping our residents to appreciate public health services, and to understand how they fit into all of that, because they do fit within public health. But I think the important piece is that, we're not just public health. We're not just public health practitioners, just from being in medicine. The other part of it too is really instilling a strong sense of research and quality improvement, and really taking leadership over those pieces of the curriculum. A major part of my work, and I really want to continue it, because as a resident, it's been, just such an honor and a joy to be able to mentor, some of my colleagues, and to come up with just all these projects that are now like crossing kind of these power differentials that, traditionally we think about, but really I think, we're showing how this can work practically and work in a way where we're empowering everyone to get involved, to have a voice. And I will share, just on that note, that very recently that Dr. Lamartine and I have really started to carve out this project that she had come up with the idea for around fentanyl use and preterm deliveries, which I'm hoping will get off the ground early next year. And by that, I mean like early in the calendar year.
That's fantastic. Well, I really applaud your focus on bringing, true scholarly activity and research principles to family medicine and primary care in the community setting, because it's certainly not a historical strength of community programs. And many of our community programs struggle to do it in a way that brings meaning and delivers, true change and true quality to our residency practices. And I think when you can inspire your peers, as you have, to set aside a little bit of time to make sure that they're, focusing on improving the delivery or studying something that has been, nagging at them or challenging their patients. That's truly what change in primary care is all about, and allows us to get more at that impactful translational change that we know. We often know the right interventions potentially, but applying them can be really the challenge, right? So I can't wait to have you continue to steward the residents in their approach to scholarly activity. So changing gears a little bit, we, for those of you who don't know, Dr. Duncan also has a particular interest in Native and tribal health. Can you share some insights into the unique health challenges faced by Native communities and how your work addresses these challenges?
Absolutely. And I'll give you a few examples once I kind of introduce this, this passion of mine and kind of where this comes from. So just to back up a little bit. So I am part of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, and this is through my mother's side. And, I think it's one thing that a lot of us studied in, U.S. history, or if at least heard about in multiple settings, that about the challenges faced by a lot of the tribes in Oklahoma. Oklahoma is very checkered, to say the least. In fact, many would say that it's actually a very dark history. My tribe, most of the Choctaw Nation, especially ours with the Mississippi Band, we're mostly right there along the eastern banks of the Mississippi River, a thriving tribe doing very well. Agriculture was a very, very strong part of the enterprise. And I do mean enterprise because the Choctaws were very well organized and very savvy, and were very good with trading, and were doing extremely well. The unfortunate part, though, is that it was also an area of land that was also very desirable to other people as well.
There it is. Yep.
And without going into a lot of the histories that, several major treaties later succeeded, and the Choctaws were displaced as part of the Trail of Tears that most people have heard about. From again, we're not talking very far from where they ended up going, but they were right there, right there in western Mississippi, again, right there along the river. And about a third of them died making the journey over to Oklahoma. At least those who agreed to this forced displacement that it effectively became. Now, the reason I say that is because you can imagine a lot of the tribes, the Cherokees, Chickasaws. I mean, there are many other tribes that were faced with the same hardship, and most of the tribes of Oklahoma are not originally from that area, and most of them not even close. And so it's interesting because that creates
so it became Indian territory, right?
Exactly. And so this became, this is so fundamental to Oklahoma history and the culture of Oklahoma that's shared by those who are native and non-native. And so I grew up around that and saw the effects of the historical trauma there in Oklahoma, and also the grappling with losing culture. There are many who are definitely not fluent. Like, I definitely don't, I'm not even really proficient in Choctaw, but I continue to work on it. But there are a lot of us that, English is our first language, or at least if not English, something other than our tribal language.
Right.
And, you can imagine it's a lot to grapple with. Now, excuse me, to translate that over to what we see in New Mexico, I won't go into a lot of the histories. I think a lot of people listening right now probably know, quite a bit about, what's happened in our state. And also, just acknowledging Santa Fe as being a very complicated symbol of New Mexican culture, because it represents both those who conquered the lands and those who originally occupied the lands. And so it's there's a lot of complexity to that. But I think because of my upbringing and just the challenges I saw in Oklahoma and how some of it translates, but some of it doesn't, to the native peoples of New Mexico and the surrounding and in the region, I think a lot of it is about being more duty bound and to be there, because I am fully committed to learning more about the peoples of this area. Because one thing I talked to an applicant recently about since we're in the course of doing interviews right now for our residency program, is I commented on how challenging it is to come over here, because just because you hold a native identity does not mean you inherently know all identities that fall under that, because that kind of descriptor is almost like calling or referring to somebody as Asian or European. It's a very, very broad category. You're talking about a lot of very different people with very different histories. So just because you hold that identity, or just because you are acknowledged by the government as holding that identity, it doesn't mean you necessarily know. But for me, that is both a challenge I welcome, but also one that I think was going to help with my own personal growth and getting more in touch with my roots.
Yeah, I always mention that this is an area where Native communities are much more present and vibrant than in other areas that I've lived. And having 23 federally recognized tribes in New Mexico, it's a place where you have to approach everybody with extreme cultural humility. Not being native to this area and learning about the interactions. It's an incredible place to practice medicine for that reason, because you have to honor the values and the history that a patient and community are bringing to their healthcare journey. And I think you summed it up really well. Just because you are a member of a tribe doesn't mean that you know exactly what a Dene is bringing to the table, right? And so it is a very vibrant place to learn how to support these varied communities. You had mentioned the multi-generational trauma, which is a really big issue in northern New Mexico. A lot of our patients or communities are struggling with. Can you talk about how your experience with positive psychology and help us define that term, because it's going to be new for a lot of listeners, I'd imagine, has flavored how you practice medicine, and perhaps lead us through a case or experience where that's made an impact on how you care for patients.
Absolutely. So I will start with that, that definition. Now, for those of you listening, I definitely recommend, if you have any interest after this, just to do a little bit of reading up on positive psychology. It's a pretty well published topic where you can get a lot of information online. One person I might refer you to immediately, just because it's kind of a gold mine for just learning about it, is Martin Seligman's work. There's some great TED Talks he's done and some other resources that you can turn to, all available online for free. Now, let's get in with that definition. So positive psychology, just in its most basic form, is about asking the question about what cognitions, what emotions, what behaviors do we observe when people are functioning optimally. And so what we're talking about is, kind of for those that can kind of picture that the Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of in their minds, we're talking about those who have really kind of gone through, they have their basic needs met, they feel safe in their environments, and they're getting to the point where they can actually, achieve self-actualization and really achieve change within their environment. And so that's really what we're talking about. A lot of my work is specifically around hope theory, which I always like to say is a theory of behavior change, because really what, hope theory, I think on the surface kind of sounds like, oh, it's like, kind of wishy-washy, like, well, I wish I could do that. I hope I could do this. But it's really actually about desired goals and goal setting, and goal pursuit. And so it's about a goal orientation, which is so ingrained in evolutionary developments within humans and other living. So it's a shared phenomenon. And what hope theory strives to describe, really more than anything else, is what it takes for people to approach those goals, to set those goals, and also what it looks like when people lose that energy, because that's an important part, that apathy piece that can arise when people are faced with repeated setbacks and repeated oppression from systemic factors. And so now to talk about kind of where this is tied in with my care of patients, I want to go back and talk about just two quick things. So the first one is that this all started a while back with my mentor. And as I got into doing more work, I ended up coming with this idea to produce or write up a narrative review around how lifestyle medicine actually can adopt a lot of the principles of positive psychology and hope to inform the work that we do for encouraging behavior change that's so fundamental to chronic disease management. So that got out there in the American Journal of Lifestyle Medicine, and that really set kind of a roadmap for me in terms of helping patients out. So going back to my fourth year of medical school, I remember there was this gentleman where we were really working through why, what was pushing him away so much from injecting or giving himself his basal insulin treatments every night, especially since we were faced with his A1C climbing, and I had known him since I was a third year student. And I did some, I borrowed some techniques from cognitive behavioral therapy with the downward arrow technique, and really, which is kind of like what we do with root cause analysis of asking the whys, of like getting to the base of a behavior and understanding it fundamentally, both for me taking care of him and then for the patient himself. And as we went through that, I really started to work in the framework of his goal prioritization, which is one of those themes within positive psychology. And he and I actually mapped out together what his purpose in life was, what he really wanted to do, and visually showed how everything we were talking about could tie together. And by the end of it, at least by the time I graduated, I did have him on his insulin and he was taking it. But a lot of it was basically showing him what those goals were and why they mattered and how we could help him achieve those. And most recently, I will just share too, there is a pending manuscript I submitted over to the International Journal of Applied Positive Psychology as part of an invited manuscript from this team that one of the researchers is out of the Netherlands. I believe the other one is out of the University of Colorado. That's really actually looking at Native culture and how positive psychology can be a tool for elucidating culture, describing culture, but not something to change culture, and how it really can fit within the fabrics to help us understand more deeply without prescribing any values. Because again, especially in the context of hope theory, we're merely describing the individuals are the ones that assign value to goals, and they are the ones that tell us what the goals are. We are just there to help, frame that.
It's a very powerful tool that I have appreciated learning from you much more about. And I think the other thing I'd just like to comment is you hit on how foundational behavior change is to primary care and chronic disease management. But really, most of what we do in primary care. And so I think it's also very synergistic. It's worth mentioning it's very synergistic with motivational interviewing techniques that are becoming much more, known and taught within medical school. So even if this framework is not taught to you under that name, you still are going to recognize a lot of the same principles with positive psychology and hope theory. So very cool that I congratulate you on how successful you've been getting those manuscripts posted and curriculum implemented within both our residency as well as the UNM psychiatry residency, which is really great. So hopefully we can continue to democratize that and get that out to the residencies in the state. And lastly, I just want to put out a question, and for those residents and medical students out there interested in kind of following a similar path, marrying clinical practice with research and public health initiatives, do you have any guidance for them? And then perhaps any summative for why New Mexico is a rich ground for this kind of work?
Absolutely. And so to hit on those points really quickly, the things I think are most important to really getting started with all of this, the first part is you really stand to benefit so much from having strong mentorship and finding people to really kind of help, at least mentor you in pieces of it. Because truly, like, the work I do now is very different from what any of my mentors have done. And truly, that's what is supposed to happen, is eventually that, your mentor is there for you to get you started, but you're the one taking your own flight. So it's kind of to help you leave the nest. And then after that, it's your journey after that. So having those mentors is really, critical for that. I will share the one thing that really has gotten me into just having by default, you just kind of an inquisitive kind of mind around your clinical practice and really thinking about it in terms of this academic side of things that sometimes we silo off, this difference between clinical or the practical piece of it and then the academic piece.
Right.
But these are all very much interconnected. But the thing that really got me to think about this was that the reason that we use a 5% type 1 error rate in studies, which is for everyone listening. And so we talk about that alpha, you'll hear about like 95% confidence intervals. You'll hear about 0.05 as being the level of significance. But the reason I bring this up is because that was arbitrarily set years and years ago. Robert Fisher was one of the most important people behind that, because there was actually an article that came out where he just suggested it as a threshold, just based on a normal distribution and where extreme parts of the data fall within a distribution. And the reason I bring that up is because if you really think about that, though, that means that there's always a significant amount, and we're not talking statistically significant, but, there's a significant amount of uncertainty in everything we think we know, that there's a reason that living systems are constantly having to be revised, constantly being updated. And the reason I say that is because if something doesn't make sense to you in clinical practice, it may be because it's violating something that we thought we knew, but probably because there's something that's left to be studied and there's something that we need to investigate. And you don't have to be your own statistician. You don't have to be an expert in research design or really anything to be able to ask these questions. Because the next thing I will tell everyone is that, and what really gives me the most joy in research is it's the networking, it's the connection, it's coming together with others who bring other skills to the table to be able to answer these questions. And so I think for all those reasons, I really want to encourage everyone listening in to really think about that, because you can be a force for your specialty without having to, go through, a ton of schooling specifically dedicated to that, because there are those people out there who can assist you and who are always, willing to lend a hand if you can, develop those relationships. So I think the theme I'm trying to suggest through all of this is, well, maybe two: relationships and curiosity, and just remembering that you can be the one to make that change instead of waiting for somebody else to do that. Because sometimes I think we get hunkered down in our bystander effect and we're kind of waiting, like, when's the next study going to come? Maybe you could be the one to write that study. You could be the one to do that.
It's very intimidating for a lot of folks to dip those toes in the research sector, but there are a lot of organizations, a lot of folks out there that are doing that great work, and so interested in getting more research based out of primary care, because that's the biggest touch point for our patients, right? So that's an area that we can have the biggest impact. I wanted to thank you again for inspiring me in my journey as well to dip my toes back into research. Certainly not my forte as a clinical educator, but definitely so high value. And I think when you watch learners get passionate about that question, right, where they hit that why that just is insufficient for them, and and that spark goes off, maybe I should look at this. It's just a beautiful experience. So I can't wait for you to continue to inspire others to find that passion and help them through the journey that is research and scholarly activity. And then what about New Mexico? Do you find is a ripe playing ground for primary care based research and simply leadership in general?
Right. We have so much need in our community, and even so much so that, we're talking at the level of getting, closing referral loops, getting our patients in for these specialty services, the role of primary care evolving constantly to meet these needs. There is so much going on right now and so much innovation in New Mexico that I think it's because we've had to, come to this point where we can't rely on the typical strategies that, that other places have been used to for years. And I think if you can get yourself into the headspace of, I can be that person to make this change, or at least to describe what's going on, you can really help inform a lot of what's going on, even policy wise. And the last thing I will say too on all of this is that because we are in a state with a lower population density, there's a lot of chances for you to really stand out and to make a difference for not only a lot of people, but in a way where you can get that face time with people, whether it be through the Department of Health, whether it be through our universities, whether it be through our community-based residency programs, to really make, a lot of changes. And so just think about the things you have to do because your patients need it. That's the area for innovation. That's that area that is right for this kind of work. And that's what I love so much about working in New Mexico.
One quick thing that makes me think of is just how intricately we've been able to work with our Human Services Department, who again finances health insurance through Medicaid for the majority of New Mexicans. I think not a lot of people realize how impactful that kind of condensation of payer is, right? And we've been at the table, and when I say we, it's family physicians, mostly through the NMAFP. You've certainly seen it at your legislative health rotation, and we've been at the table helping them design an alternative payment model, which we were one of 5 states to be awarded that waiver through Medicare to be able to get away from fee for service and try to honor more the hard work that primary care is doing upstream to help prevent illness, prevent hospitalization and ER visits, and try to do our best to reduce costs. So super excited to continue to help shape those kind of policies. And when Dr. Duncan mentions you can have a massive impact in the small pond, that has absolutely been my experience. We're looking for leaders. We are looking for change makers. And Dr. Duncan certainly is one of those folks that I cannot wait to watch the career of, because you will just have such a great impact, continue to have a great impact on our communities and our great states. So thank you so much for this great time. Anything else that you want to put out to the airwaves before we finish up?
I think the only thing I wanted to share is, definitely for anybody listening, don't be a stranger. This is another, kind of a call out to everyone to engage with your community. And even if you listen to this and, find my email address and, send that over to me, I'm always happy to talk about these things and, just to really make us feel connected, because there's been so much we faced recently that's disconnected us from one another. And so I think there's a lot of great work we can do. But thank you all so much for your attention. And hopefully this was, you got some good information and found this to be an enjoyable experience of at least getting this perspective about this work that we have going on in New Mexico.
Yeah, and always, if this conversation got the juices flowing, please do reach out to us. It is relational work. So, Dr. Duncan hit on the power of mentorship, and I cannot agree more that we are absolutely happy to work with you regardless of your stage of training or experience, and definitely try to find us through the consortium and link up to the great work that we're doing here. And if you have any requests for future subjects, please do send them along. So Ashten, thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.
And in health, I'm Dr. Mac Bowen. Take care.
And that brings us to the end of another insightful episode of the Puentes podcast. A special thanks to Dr. Ashten Duncan for joining us and sharing his experiences, and to Dr. Mac Bowen for leading the conversation. Puentes is produced by the New Mexico Primary Care Training Consortium. To learn more about the NMPCTC, visit our website at newmexicoresidencies.org or find us on Facebook, Instagram, and X at NMPCTC. While there, we encourage you to send us a message and let us know what topics you'd like covered in future episodes. Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll join us again as we continue to build and strengthen the bridges of primary care in New Mexico. This is Puentes.